to that breaking news tonight. A man has been taken to hospital with serious injuries after multiple people have been stabbed on a train in Huntington, Cambridgeshire, of course. And we've got some new footage to show you that we believe is from the scene.
Machete gangs, nightly stabbings, riots in city centres. Welcome to the United Kingdom 2025. A country once known for its stiff upper lip, tea traditions, and orderly queues is now being described by its own citizens as a war zone. The numbers are jaw-dropping. More than 53,000 confirmed knife attacks a year. That's one every 10 minutes. And the most chilling part? Machete attacks have surged by a staggering 320% since the year 2000, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Streets are no longer safe. Police forces are stretched thin. And for many, the unthinkable has become reality. They don't trust the state to protect them anymore. Let's walk through this collapse, step by step. This isn't some isolated spike in crime or sensationalist panic. We're looking at an entrenched crisis, one with systemic roots and wide-reaching consequences. From gang violence spreading like wildfire to a government that keeps choosing cosmetic fixes over meaningful solutions, it's clear the United Kingdom is in deep trouble. You've got people getting stabbed in broad daylight, teenagers carrying knives to school, machetes being pulled during petty disputes. And meanwhile, political leaders talk about hosting kindness workshops like that's going to stop a 6-inch blade. Cities like London, Leeds, and Birmingham are experiencing levels of violence that feel closer to failed state territory than a modern Western democracy. And the public? They've had enough. Protests are erupting, not quiet ones, either. We're talking full-scale clashes with police, fires outside immigration centers, angry chant demanding mass deportations. It's not just tension, it's fury. And no, it's not limited to extremists or fringe groups. It's growing numbers of regular people who feel abandoned by their leaders. The SDS-40 policy, remember that name, is at the center of a lot of this outrage. It's a prison population relief measure that's become a public safety disaster. Under SDS-40, thousands of inmates, including violent offenders, are being released early to ease capacity. Sounds great on paper. In practice, over 40,000 of those released reoffended within the year. And the prison system? It's operating at 99% capacity, packed with foreign nationals who, for a variety of reasons, aren't being deported. So the government solution? Keep letting people out, even the dangerous ones. This is where things really start to unravel. Police are pulling back. They're underfunded, understaffed, and overwhelmed. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. They are stuck enforcing soft laws while hardened criminals operate with near impunity. And when they do act, they are handcuffed by policy constraints, public scrutiny, and internal bureaucracy. Now throw in the fact that the government is actively suppressing crime data. Reports intentionally leave out suspect information, things like nationality or immigration status, out of fear it will stoke racial tensions or trigger backlash. But all this censorship does is breed suspicion, rumor, and resentment. People aren't stupid. When crime reports are vague, communities start filling in the blanks themselves. That's a recipe for paranoia and division. It deepens a fracture between law enforcement and the public. It fuels conspiracy theories and damages the credibility of every official statement that follows. With trust in law enforcement bottoming out and the government visibly failing to respond, people are taking matters into their own hands. That's not hyperbole. We're seeing a rise in community patrols, unofficial groups taking it upon themselves to keep order. Some of them are acquiring illegal defensive tools like black market pepper spray. Others are going further, setting up armed watches in neighborhoods, guarding local businesses, and circulating footage of alleged offenders online. And let's be clear, this isn't noble, grassroots justice. This is what happens when a centralized system breaks down. When institutions lose legitimacy, people stop waiting for help. They start helping themselves. It's vigilante justice born from desperation. But of course, this doesn't solve anything. It just adds another layer of chaos. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. Armed civilians clashing with gangs? That's not law and order, that's anarchy. And the government response? Silence, mostly. Maybe a few new laws banning certain weapons, a speech about unity, a carefully worded press release about community dialogue. But nothing changes. Even Britain's international standing is taking a nosedive. Investors are pulling out of London, worried about public safety and civil instability. High net worth individuals are quietly moving their assets elsewhere. They don't want to park their fortunes in a country where riots break out over immigration policy and teenagers are bleeding out on train platforms. This is economic damage with a long tail. You can't rebuild investor confidence overnight. And when your streets are seen as unsafe, tourism suffers too. The ripple effect touches every part of the economy. Healthcare? Overrun. Emergency rooms are now trauma centers by default. Doctors are treating more stabbing victims than ever, and paramedics report being called to violent incidents that used to be rare in most neighborhoods. It's not just dangerous, it's exhausting. And the political leadership? Hopelessly out of sync. On one end, you've got politicians pushing ineffective weapons bans, like outlawing zombie knives, while ignoring the fact that gangs don't buy their weapons legally. On the other end, you've got populist leaders stoking outrage without offering any coherent solutions beyond vague promises of getting tough or tightening borders. No one seems willing to actually do the hard, complicated work of policy reform. This is how democracies rut. Not with one big dramatic collapse, but with a steady erosion of trust, safety, and cohesion. And once you lose that social contract, once people no longer believe their government can or will protect them, it's a long road back. We're seeing the early signs of urban balkanization, communities turning inward, neighborhoods setting their own rules, choosing who gets to come and go, operating independently from the state. It's a slow-motion unraveling of centralized authority, and the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to reverse. It's also making Britain harder to govern. When citizens see the state as irrelevant, or worse, complicit, in their suffering, every law becomes suggestion. Every arrest is met with protest. Every policy sparks division. And don't underestimate the psychological toll. Living in a society where violence is normal, where walking home at night feels like a gamble, changes people. It hardens them. It creates apathy, paranoia, and a belief that survival is up to you and you alone. That's the real danger here. Not just the blood on the streets, but the slow decay of collective identity. The belief that Britain is still Britain, that there's a shared set of rules and values, is eroding. And if that disappears entirely, you're not looking at a nation anymore. You're looking at factions. So where does it end? If nothing changes, if the government keeps passing half measures and the public keeps losing faith, the trajectory is clear. More violence, more division, more vigilantism. And eventually, a breakdown so severe that recovery becomes almost impossible. This isn't a theoretical warning. It's already happening. The signs are everywhere. And unless there's a massive course correction, serious reform, real enforcement, and actual transparency, Britain's transformation into a fractured, fearful society might become permanent. Let us know what you think. Are the UK's leaders blind to the crisis? Or is the system too broken to fix? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll keep breaking down with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss. Like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. Chaos so you don't have to. Alright, let's get into the next layer of this mess, because yes, it gets worse. We've talked about the rise in violence, the complete failure of the SDS-40 policy, the silent collapse of law enforcement. But what about the why? What about the deeper dysfunction that allowed all this to spiral in the first place? Let's start with accountability, or rather, the total absence of it. Right now, in Britain, violent criminals are walking free because there's no space left in prisons. That's not an exaggeration. That's not clickbait. The prison system is 99% full, and instead of expanding capacity or finding serious solutions, the government's answer is, let them out early. Cross your fingers. Hope for the best. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Only the bullet is a machete. And then when these offenders reoffend, as tens of thousands already have, we get the same old routine. Shock from the media, outrage from the public, some awkward minister trying to explain why early release was a humane, cost-effective thing to do. But behind closed doors, the system just resets. Round and round. You'd expect a crisis of this scale to spark radical policy changes, a surge in public safety funding, maybe even an emergency summit. But instead, we get silence. Or worse, distraction. Because here's the thing, the government isn't just failing to stop the violence. It's actively hiding it. Authorities are going out of their way to keep suspect details vague, especially when those details touch immigration status or nationality. It's all in the name of avoiding community unrest. But what it actually does is spark suspicion and rumor. And once the public feels like they are not being told the full story, that trust is gone. And once it's gone, it's really hard to get back. That silence also plays perfectly into the hands of more extreme voices. You leave a vacuum of information, and someone will fill it with whatever suits their agenda. So instead of measured policy debate, we get emotional, polarizing rhetoric. We get culture war posturing instead of real solutions. And in the middle of all that noise, people are still dying. It's a perfect storm, and no one's steering the ship. Meanwhile, communities are fracturing. People aren't just angry at the government, they are turning on each other. Tensions are high, and the narrative being pushed from all sides are turning neighbor against neighbor. You're either seen as part of the problem or part of the resistance, and the nuance? That's long gone. The more the government suppresses specifics. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. The more it fuels that divide, people feel like they are living in a country where the truth is optional, where safety is a luxury, and where you have to rely on your community, or worse, yourself, because the institutions designed to protect you are either asleep at the wheel or actively working against you. It's no surprise, then, that we're seeing people buy illegal weapons just to feel safe. Pepper spray? Illegal. Self-defense sprays? Black market only. So people turn to what's available. And just like that, the public becomes armed. Not legally, not safely, but desperately. And let's be clear, this isn't some survivalist fantasy. It's fear. It's parents afraid to let their kids walk to school. It's shop owners installing reinforced glass and keeping baseball bats behind the counter. It's pensioners learning to lock 3 bolts on their front door just to sleep at night. Because when you call the police and no one shows up, that's when people decide to stop calling. And then there's the vigilante groups. What starts as community patrols quickly blurs into something far darker. People with zero training taking enforcement into their own hands. Identifying suspects. Posting photos. Confronting people in the street. All it takes is one bad call, one wrong face, and someone innocent gets hurt. But who's stepping in to stop it? No one. Because once the public starts replacing the state, it's a sign the state has already lost control. And speaking of control, let's talk about the government's obsession with controlling optics over outcomes. You know what gets prioritized. Banning zombie knives. You've seen them, those ridiculous oversized weapons with jagged edges that look like props from a bad horror movie. Sure, banning them sound productive, but guess what? The majority of stabbings aren't committed with zombie knives. They are committed with whatever's at hand. Kitchen knives, screwdrivers, box cutters. The ban is a PR move, not a solution. It doesn't address the why or the how. It just gives politicians something to point to in press briefings. We ban the scary-looking blades. Job done. Meanwhile, illegal markets flourish. The black market is alive and well, and every weapon ban just pushes more buyers underground. So the criminals? They are not affected. They are just harder to track now. And border control? Another mess. The refusal to deport illegal arrivals, even when they committed serious crimes, has become a lightning rod for controversy. Critics say the system's refusal to act is... You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm, bleeding the country dry, overloading public services, straining housing, and overwhelming courts. But the government won't touch it. Too sensitive, too risky. So instead, they dodge, delay, deflect. That avoidance is what's making everything worse. Because in the absence of action, perception takes over. And once people feel like they've been abandoned, that feeling becomes reality, no matter what the data says. And that's exactly what's happening now. Foreign investors are taking one look at the headlines: Machete attacks, gang violence, arson, protests, and they are pulling out, relocating offices, moving capital elsewhere. London, once the jewel of Europe's finance scene, is being seen as too unstable, too risky. And once the investors go, so does opportunity. You're left with fewer jobs, higher costs, and growing resentment. And when you combine economic decline with rising crime, weakened institutions, and growing mistrust, you get a crisis of legitimacy. Not just a political crisis, a national identity crisis. What is Britain right now? Is it a country that protects its citizens, upholds the rule of law, supports its communities? Or is it a state that's quietly slipping into dysfunction while pretending everything's fine? That's the real danger, the slow normalization of failure. People adapt. They start accepting violence as part of daily life. They lower their expectations. They stop voting. They stop reporting crimes. They stop believing things can get better. And once that sets in, that's when the collapse becomes permanent. Because when people stop believing in the system stops existing. Not officially, not on paper, but in practice. And what you're left with is a broken country, a patchwork of fear, silence, and suspicion. So what's next? If things don't change, and quickly, the UK is on track to become a case study in modern societal failure. Not because of a war, or a famine, or some external catastrophe, but because of apathy, because of bureaucratic cowardice, because people in power chose easy optics over hard reform. And the cost? It's already here. It's the teenager bleeding in the hallway of his school. It's the shop owner too scared to close late. It's the grandmother carrying a panic alarm to get to the pharmacy. It's the country you grew up in, turning into something unrecognizable. All right, let's keep going, because the story doesn't stop here. If the last decade has taught us anything, it's that a society can slowly rot from the inside out while everyone in power pretends things are fine. Britain isn't on the verge of collapse. It's already deep in it, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. What's happening now isn't a warning sign. It's the fallout. You've got entire neighborhoods where police barely show up anymore unless there's a body on the ground. Crimes go unreported, not because they are not happening, but because people know there's no point. Call 999, and maybe you'll be put on hold. Maybe you'll get an officer on the phone who's juggling 5 other calls. Maybe, if it's serious enough, someone will show up the next day. And maybe by then, it won't matter. This isn't just inefficiency. This is abandonment. And once people feel abandoned by their government, by law enforcement, by the media, they begin to organize outside of it. What starts as neighborhood watches quickly becomes local patrols. What begins as community self-defense turns into de facto justice. That guy who was spotted with a knife last week? Someone confronts him. Someone records it. It ends up online. His face is plastered all over neighborhood forums, labeled as a threat, guilty or not. One wrong accusation, and someone innocent ends up in the hospital. And who's liable? Who's accountable? No one. Because we're not dealing with laws anymore. We're dealing with fear. That's what this all comes down to. Fear, institutional neglect, and total breakdown of trust. And there's no single party or person to blame. This isn't just a failure of leadership. It's a failure of an entire system that refused to adapt, refused to act, and refused to take the rising chaos seriously. And now, the chaos is running the show. Let's not forget the media's role in all of this either. For every genuine report on rising crime, there's a dozen others burying the real story under euphemisms and edits. Certain crimes don't get reported. Certain details get scrubbed. Suspect descriptions get cut. It's all done under the guise of social harmony. But what it really does is breed distrust. People know what's happening in their streets. They see the attacks. They hear the sirens. They scroll past the grainy CCTV clips on social media. And then they turn on the news and get told everything is under control. It's not. And pretending it is doesn't protect anyone. It only fuels a fire. Because when people start believing the media is gaslighting them, they stop listening to everything, even the truth. So where do we go from here? Well, let's talk about leadership, or more accurately, the vacuum where leadership should be. Keir Starmer, Nigel Farage, pick your flavor. But neither of them is offering a real solution. What we're getting is either toothless technocratic language or populist slogans. Starmer wants to legislate around the edges, issuing bans that look good on paper but have zero street-level impact. Meanwhile, Farage rallies are frustrated with big promises but conveniently skips over the how. Both are playing a game, but no one's actually trying to win it. They are just making sure they don't lose votes. And meanwhile, the streets stay dangerous. What's missing is any kind of coherent strategy. Where's a serious talk about rebuilding police presence? About giving officers the power, funding, and legal coverage to actually do their jobs? Where's the plan to fix the prison crisis, to overhaul early release policies like SDS 40 that are actively recycling violent offenders back into society? Where's the action on border control, on deportation enforcement, on securing public safety without descending into chaos or xenophobia? Nowhere, because it's politically risky, and no one wants to take the hit. So instead, we get these symbolic gestures, knife buybacks, online safety campaigns, lectures about hate speech, while the core rut spreads unchecked. And while all this political theater plays out, ordinary people are stuck living in the fallout. They are the ones getting mugged on the way home. They are the ones getting caught in riots sparked by anger the government refuses to acknowledge. They are the ones paying higher taxes for services that barely function. Let's talk school for a second. Teenagers are bringing weapons to class. Attacks are happening inside school grounds. Teachers are scared. Parents are terrified. And the kids? They are growing up thinking this is normal. It's not just a crime crisis. It's a generational crisis. A full societal shift toward fear, distrust, and hypervigilance. You raise a generation in this environment, and what do you think happens? You create a future where violence is a default setting, not a last resort. So let's be brutally honest. If something doesn't shift soon, the United Kingdom is heading toward irreversible fragmentation. Not a dramatic civil war or dystopian collapse, but a quiet, grinding disintegration where trust, safety, and order just dissolve over time. And what replaces them? Fear-based micro-communities, private security forces, gated neighborhoods, ethnic and ideological enclaves, a government that exists mostly on paper, a public that has given up expecting anything from it. You'll still have elections. You'll still have the news telling you everything is fine. But the country underneath it all? Unrecognizable. That's where this is going. And unless the people in charge start treating this like the existential crisis it is, not just a PR inconvenience, that future is coming faster than anyone wants to admit. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, this can't be real, it's too extreme, ask yourself, how much worse does it need to get before we're allowed to say the truth out loud? Because what's happening is extreme. These aren't isolated incidents. They are trends. They are consequences of a system that's been neglected, mismanaged, and diluted to the point of collapse. Britain is still beautiful. It still has heart. It still has people who care deeply about their communities. But they are being tested like never before. They are being left out to dry by institutions that would rather hide problems and solve them. And the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that we reach a tipping point, a moment where things can't be fixed anymore, where all that's left is damage control, where we stop asking how to fix it and start asking how to survive it. That's not paranoia. That's what history looks like when societies fail slowly, then all at once. And maybe it's time to stop pretending Britain is the exception. All right, let's finish this out. Because honestly, if you're still here, still watching, it means you feel it too. The unease, the quiet dread, the sense that something fundamental has changed in Britain, and no one in power wants to acknowledge it. We're not just talking about statistics anymore. We're talking about how it feels to walk down a street you used to know. A street that once felt familiar, now lined with shuttered shops, boarded-up pubs, and that sinking tension you can't quite name but can't shake off either. You cross the street when you see a group of teens. Not because you're paranoid, but because you've read the headlines. You've seen the videos. And because you know that if something does happen, it'll be just another unsolved attack buried beneath the next day's breaking news. And the worst part? You're not alone. Everyone's doing it. Everyone feels it. But most people are too tired or too afraid to say it out loud. Because saying it means confronting the truth. The government is no longer in control. And no, that's not some fringe conspiracy. That's a reality you see in the rise of vigilante patrols, the normalization of illegal self-defense tools, and the open defiance of police in cities across the country. That's a reality in the videos of riots, the footage of machete brawls in broad daylight, the endless scroll of crime that barely makes the front page anymore. This is what it looks like when a state loses grip, not all at once, but piece by piece. And the people in power? They're still clinging to optics, still staging press conferences, still making half-hearted speeches about unity and community cohesion, as if the public hasn't already given up on that script. You cannot kindness workshop your way out of this. You cannot host a youth poetry slam while releasing 40,000 violent reoffenders under a policy that's supposed to relieve prison capacity. You cannot lecture the public about tolerance while refusing to deport known criminals because it might spark criticism. You cannot ban zombie knives and call it reform while black market weapons flood the streets like they're on sale at Tesco. People aren't stupid. They know when they're being played. And they know when the people in charge have run out of answers. And when that happens, what do you get? You get what we have now, a public no longer waiting for change because they realize no one's coming to help. Instead, they're adjusting. They're forming groups, watching out for each other, arming themselves however they can, sharing local crime maps, suspect videos, back-channel warnings, creating their own networks of protection outside of law enforcement, outside of government. And sure, maybe that starts with good intentions. But history has shown, time and time again, that once informal justice takes root, formal justice loses legitimacy. You want to know what the long-term consequences of this are? It's not just higher crime rates. It's societal fragmentation on a scale that's hard to reverse. You get micro-communities with their own rules, their own justice systems, their own understanding of who belongs and who doesn't. That's not local pride. That's a slow, creeping form of civil disintegration. And once it sets in, the damage isn't just legal. It's cultural. It's emotional. Because people stop feeling like they are part of one nation. They start thinking in terms of survival, not society. And that brings us to something no politician wants to admit. Trust is dead. Trust in the police? Gone. Trust in the courts? Fading. Trust in Parliament? Please. And why wouldn't it be? You have policies being rolled out that actively put violent offenders back into neighborhoods. You have crime reports that intentionally leave out crucial information. You have local councils setting up kindness task forces while knife attacks rise and hospitals run out of trauma beds. You have entire city blocks where you're more likely to find a machete than a patrol car. And in response, what does the state offer? Silence. Or worse, spin. Let's talk economics for a second. Because this crisis isn't just moral or cultural, it's financial. London, once the crown jewel of Europe, is losing investment. High-value individuals are moving their money overseas. Corporations are relocating. Why? Because they don't want to operate in a city where riots can break out over immigration centers, where luxury districts need private security just to operate after dark. Safety is a foundation of commerce. Without it, the economy cracks. And those cracks, they're already spreading. Shops closing early. Small businesses shutting down entirely. tourism numbers dipping, and public services, from hospitals to transit, operating under threat, under strain, under fear. This is how a nation quietly bleeds out. And it's not because the people stop caring. It's because the people in charge stop listening. So now we're left with a country where fear is a default setting, where public trust has been replaced by public suspicion, and where the average citizen isn't looking to their leaders for help. They're looking to each other. Or worse, they're looking at their door locks and pepper sprays and wondering if that's all they can count on. This isn't alarmism. This isn't panic. This is what the data and the streets are telling us, loud and clear. Britain is not facing a future crisis. Britain is living through a present collapse. And unless there's a radical shift in leadership, in policy, and in political courage, unless someone's willing to say enough with the hollow speeches and do something real, this will become permanent. That's the part no one wants to admit. That it's not just about solving a spike in crime. It's about reclaiming the legitimacy of an entire government. It's about making people believe that the state still matters. Because right now, people don't believe that. And once that belief is gone, it's not just knives and gangs you're dealing with. It's a nation that has emotionally and psychologically checked out of its own social contract. So if you're watching this and thinking, it can't be this bad, you're not paying attention. The streets are talking. The numbers are screaming. The headlines are relentless. And the silence from leadership, that's the loudest sound of all. It's time to ask a question no one on a campaign stage will ever say out loud. Has Britain already lost control? Because if this is what normal looks like now, if armed patrols, censored reports, overrun hospitals, and systemic early release of violent criminals are just part of life, then something is already broken. And if we don't call it out for what it is, that break becomes permanent. And since we're not sugarcoating anything here, let's go even deeper. Because here's the part that hits the hardest, the slow death of hope. It's not just that people don't trust the system. It's that they don't even expect it to get better anymore. The bar has dropped so low, people celebrate when nothing terrible happens. When their kid makes it home from school without seeing a fight. When they manage a week of work without their shop getting vandalized. When the ambulance actually shows up in under an hour. That's the new baseline. People aren't asking for luxury or privilege. They are begging for basic safety. For public spaces that aren't war zones. For a functioning justice system that punishes crime before it escalates to tragedy. For a government that admits things are broken instead of gaslighting them with carefully worded press releases and performative concern. And honestly, the emotional toll is impossible to quantify. It's the mother who walks her teenager to school every morning, not because she doesn't trust her child, but because she doesn't trust the walk. It's the young man who carries a hidden spray in his bag, just in case. It's the elderly couple who won't go out after dark anymore because they read one too many stories about unprovoked attacks on pensioners. That's not living. That's surviving. And when survival becomes a national mood, what's left? A country full of people exhausted by the constant hum of danger, tired of screaming into the void, tired of watching one politician after another stand in front of a podium, promise to review the situation and disappear until the next election cycle. They are tired of half-fixes, tired of empty gestures, tired of being told their fear is exaggerated when they are the ones living it. So if there's one thing we can say with certainty, it's that change isn't going to come from the top. It never has. It's going to come from people refusing to normalize this madness. From people calling it what it is, not urban unrest, not isolated incidents, but systemic collapse. It's going to come from a public that refuses to play along with the illusion that everything is under control when it clearly isn't. So ask yourself, how much worse does it need to get before someone finally tells the truth? And if that truth makes you uncomfortable, good. Maybe that discomfort is what sparks the pressure. Maybe that's what forces real change. Because right now, we're running out of time. Like, share, and subscribe if you're done waiting for someone else to say it. Because we're going to keep showing up until someone listens. And if no one does, then at least we'll know we didn't stay silent while everything burned down.